Cultured fermented vegetables are all over the world. It's kimchi, it's sauerkraut, it's pickles, it's everywhere. It's traditionally a way to preserve vegetables for a long time. That's what they used before refrigeration was around. And incidentally, it also makes the vegetable matter a lot easier to digest and makes a lot more nutrients available from it. And it really cultures a lot of good bacteria that's good for the gut. So I'm just going to make a real easy sauerkraut. It's very fast, very simple. I'll show you how. Right, here I have my main ingredient, which is just cabbage. I got some real cheap green cabbage, just one head, and I kind of chopped it up into these chunks that are small enough to go into my food processor here. In my food processor, I just have a grater attachment. I like the grater attachment because it gets the pieces a lot smaller than the slicer or than hand slicing, and it goes very fast. The only other stuff that's going to go into the sauerkraut is some onion here, which I'm just going to do for a little bit of color and a little bit of flavor. It's really not necessary. The only things that are really necessary for the sauerkraut are the cabbage and salt. That's salt. That's actually caraway, which is another extra thing that I'm sticking in there. But for real basic sauerkraut, all you need is cabbage and salt. I use about a half teaspoon of salt per pound of cabbage, and I have about 3 pounds of cabbage here, so I used a teaspoon and a half of salt. And it's really just a matter of getting the cabbage into little tiny pieces and then mixing it with the salt. So I'm just gonna grate all this up. Alright, so I grated up all of my cabbage, and I've just got it in this huge bowl here. You'll notice that I saved an outer leaf of the cabbage. That will be important later. Be sure to grab a leaf off of the cabbage before you grind the rest of it up. Now I'm just going to put in my onions. There we go. Toss in my salt, my caraway. Now the ratio of salt that I used is a little bit low compared to some recipes. A lot of it is just done by taste. After I mix all this up, then I'm gonna taste a little bit of it. If it tastes like it needs some more salt, then I'll just add a little bit more salt. It's not an exact science. It's an art, you know, like any kind of cooking. It's an art. You get a feel for it, you develop your tastes, and you figure it out. That's how it works. So the salt that I added is drawing out a lot of moisture. You can see that dripping down from the vegetable matter. And that is important because for this to ferment properly, for all the bacteria that we want to grow, to really start growing well, there needs to be a brine. There just needs to be salt water kind of covering all this vegetable matter. And if we need to, we can add a little bit of water to top it all off, but ideally you can just get all the water you need out of the vegetable matter itself. So that's squeezing out real nice. I think I'm gonna taste a little bit of it, see how it's doing. I think I could use a little bit more salt. I'll just toss a little bit more in there. It's tasting pretty good, you know, for raw cabbage with raw onion. I think that's tasting all right. I can see having that with a bratwurst. All right, and a lot of recipes that you see will have you squeezing this cabbage for like 20 minutes or something ridiculous. But since I grated up the cabbage instead of just chopping it with a knife, then that broke down a lot of the vegetable matter already, so I don't have to squeeze as much. That's pretty much done right there. Like, it's ready to pack up. So I'm gonna wash my hands real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, so we've mixed up all of the cabbage and the salt and the caraway and the onions. Now we are going to pack it into a jar. All you need is a big glass jar, one that's big enough to hold all of that stuff. You want glass. You don't want plastic or metal, because the metal can release toxins into the acidic environment of the ferment, and plastics can release some bad stuff too. There can be some reactions there that the bacteria don't like. So glass is really best. If you have a ceramic container, that can be okay too. But just some kind of big glass or ceramic container. I'm going to set this on top of my cutting board so that it doesn't get everywhere. And now I'm just going to take handfuls. I'm going to start packing it in there. Just going to start dropping it. I'll clean the outside off after I'm done. Take a couple of handfuls at a time, kind of pack it down. There we go, just kind of make it even. Get another couple of handfuls. All right, we've got it all in our jar here. Check it out. Now I'm just going to press it down to try to get all that liquid above the level of the vegetable matter. If there's bits and pieces sticking up above the brine, then you might get mold. You might get some bad bacteria to start to grow on that. It's best to keep everything, just try as best as you can to keep everything below the level of the liquid. And as you will notice, there's still a lot of stuff kind of floating around down there, so that's why I hung on to this leaf here, so that I can use it to press everything down into there. And of course, like anything with cooking, it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to be able to get most of the sauerkraut down below the leaf, below the liquid there. I don't know how well you can see that, but it doesn't really matter. It's one of those things that people have been doing for thousands of years. It's kind of hard to screw up. You are just going to clean all this off, and then I'll show you what to do next. If you don't have a lid that can leave a little bit of airspace, like this one can, then you probably want to cover your jar with some kind of cloth, because you want air to be able to flow out, but you don't want dust and mold particles to be able to settle in. So just kind of cover it loosely, either with a lid or with a cloth. And then all you're going to do is set the jar someplace where it won't get too hot and where it won't really get disturbed. And you'll leave it there for, let's set it up on top of the fridge. You just leave it there for about a month. I leave mine about a month. Some people only do theirs for a few days, but I like leaving mine for a good long while to make sure everything cultures in there. It doesn't rot. This is food preservation. It just gets better. It gets nice and tangy and sour, and once it gets to the point where you like the way it tastes, you put it in the fridge, it'll keep for months. It'll be great. And then you'll have a good probiotic rich food that you made yourself. You don't need to go to the store to get something like that. It's quick and easy and delicious, and you made your own sauerkraut.